I am of the impression, and I think a great many of you would likely agree with me, that the liberals are almost willing to start World War III in order to further their excuse that the Russians cost their girl the recent election. It's just the excuse is just flip the page, go to a new one when the first one doesn't work, go to number two, three, four. And now we're hearing people all over Washington, they just repeat it so often that everyone else starts repeating it. The thing is that this country also interferes in other elections. Italy recently, Brexit in England, Germany. There were efforts in the past to spy on the Germans. President Obama had to go groveling to Angela Merkel and apologize. Israel. And yet, they're trying to sell you. I think it was the Media Research Center, which reported last week that the network newscast, the old alphabet networks, had reported 49 times in the last few weeks that it was election hacking. Well, nobody hacked the election. They hacked emails from the Democrat National Committee, but nobody messed with any voter totals. But there's been that subtle effort to try and sell the notion that indeed the election was illegitimate because Hillary Clinton had her homebrew server, and in fact, this is all sort of covered up the story that broke a week ago Sunday, which was that Clinton was actually sharing. She was sharing some classified material with Sidney Blumenthal, who did not work for the government. He's just one of these Clinton family, crime capos that works as an underling, trying to hoover up money from big donors. Yet, what I have been saying is the real enemy we're not dealing with, and we're ignoring that. In the effort to try and make excuses, they would, as I say, start World War III with Russia, which has a lot. You didn't know this. They have a lot of mutual interests with the good old USA. Review and Outlook. This is the lead editorial today at the Wall Street Journal. The Obama White House released two reports last week on subjects that will shape the national security agenda of the Trump administration. The one about Russia hacking launched 1,000 headlines. The other about Chinese efforts to dominate the global semiconductor industry deserves more attention. Semiconductors are essential to everything from home appliances to cars, satellites, and fighter aircraft. The U.S. has led the industry since its start in the 1950s, with firms like Intel, Qualcomm, and Apple today accounting for nearly 50% of global sales. So this is still, it was American ingenuity that developed this industry, and it still is one of those bright spots in the U.S. economy. It's worth $165 billion a year. It employs nearly 400,000 Americans, four times more than the steel industry. China hopes to change this through state subsidies and predatory trade practices. Beijing also increasingly forces Chinese firms to use domestic suppliers while forcing foreign firms to transfer technology in exchange for market access. This indirect theft of intellectual property is complemented by direct pilfering via abuse of joint ventures, state-backed cyber hacking, and commercial espionage. Last week, the Chinese showed off a brand new submarine they have, which could deliver, I think, 4 nuclear warheads to American cities. And the Chinese continue to claim that most of the Pacific is now their private lake. And yet, Russia, Russia, Russia. I'm sorry, but am I missing something here? Telephone number to reach our program today, 736-0300, 736-0300. My email address is bill.colley at townsquaremedia.com. And we have a caller with us right now. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air. Thank you for your patience. They try and try and try. You pick up the phone, and then if you don't say, hey, what's going on, immediately, they decide to hang up. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead. Yeah, well, I can keep talking on my own. It's not a big issue, unless they're trying to hack me this morning by the effort. Do we have anybody there today? No. Yeah, see, that's I'm not even going to bother for the next couple of minutes. But here's the thing. Media is ignoring this threat. Democrats are ignoring this threat. Official Washington is ignoring this threat, and they've been ignoring it for decades, going all the way back to when Bill Clinton sold China the missile technology. In other words, he gave them the rope that could hang us. And it's just, they just keep whistling along like nothing here has happened, and they want you to focus instead on the big, evil, mean old Russians. There was a time 20 years ago when the Russians really were looking forward to great relations with the United States. And then we told them they had to have shock therapy for their economy. Russians literally starved on the streets of some of the major cities and froze in their homes out in the hinterlands during that period. And yet we don't bother to do that ourselves, which would be the equivalent of saying no more Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Obamacare. Those things are all gone. No more home heating assistance, no more home cooling assistance. All of these programs would just simply just vanish. When we told them they had to do that, and we actually destroyed their economy at the time, and it still hasn't fully recovered. And then it was Bill Clinton who expanded NATO. No wonder they don't like us. And yet they're still willing to try and work with us because we have a shared common enemy in the Islamic radicals around the world and potentially China. But you wouldn't know it again if you got your news exclusively from mainstream media in this country. Going to see if we have a caller now. Caller, you're next. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. I'll tell you, yeah, we just look at all of the security leaks that have been happening and look at Hillary's emails and her private server. We don't know, we know there's all kinds of security breaches and intelligence information that was passed along. I mean, and now, the hypocrisy of the mainstream media just blows my mind. I would like to make a comment about Heather Scott. Um, I think there's a lady that really is being vilified tremendously, and she's one of the few legislators that don't have their head in the sand concerning the refugee problem that's going to be
But
continuing.
that's not politically correct. And the
I
Republican
know, absolutely
establishment
not.
doesn't want some newspaper editorialist to say nasty things about them, despite the fact
Well,
nobody reads those editorials any longer.
the problem is that when the uh, local paper had their dog and pony show, some of us, a few of us, met with the people that were speakers that night, and they could not assure us in this private meeting that these people from Syria or elsewhere, Muslims coming from anywhere, were properly vetted.
Right.
And they said the same thing that night. Now, Heather Scott is one of the few legislators that's standing up for the people that are concerned. And it's a big concern as we get a bigger population of these people in here. And everybody says, oh, they're good neighbors and everything. Yeah, they'll be good neighbors, just like Pamela Geller and Bridget Gabriel said. As soon as they get a majority, they're going to kill Christians. Well, they're already doing it in this country. We just don't hear much about it. It just flashes through the news, the last 5 killings in Fort Lauderdale. I guess that's collateral damage to allow these people in here. So anyway, I think she really means well, and I think a lot of things that have been said have been blown out of proportion. But to strip her of her committee assignments, I think is overkill on Bedke's part. That's my personal feeling.
Hey, thank you much for the call. And speaking of newspapers, my column tomorrow in the Times News is going to deal with this very subject. Now, you have the politicians; they're the people who mainly read those op-ed pages and the editorials because it's usually about them. So they think that everybody else is reading this stuff, and it's not true. And yet, it influences them. It has an outsized influence. But if you want someone to throw a little kerosene on the fire, catch my column tomorrow morning at the Times News. You can also see it online if you don't pick up a hard copy of the newspaper. It's going to anger a lot of the establishment Republicans as well as a lot of the liberals around the state who are just trying to silence voices that we really need to hear. You're up next. You're on the air on Top Story on KLIX. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. Thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it very much. A little bit ago you were talking about how they're saying that Trump is not a legitimate president, won't be a legitimate president. They won't allow him to be a legitimate president. Well, I can think back when Obama was elected in, and it came back to the birther thing with his birth certificate. Now, I don't know if it's real or not. I'm sure it is. I mean, I'm sure they checked that stuff out. But in other words, I had to get used to the fact that Obama was going to be president. Didn't support him, didn't like him, never did, never will. But it's the fact that he became the president of the United States legally, lawfully. And up until about 2 or 3 months ago, Obama and Hillary were saying how shocked they were that Trump would even mention the fact that there could be influence on our election. It can't happen. It's impossible, people. This guy is a nut. You can't let him in here. And then as soon as he's elected in, the crybabies from the lib side, they come whining up the street and they want to protest. They want to fight. They want to pull people out of their cars and beat them up because they supported Trump. This is where our country's gotten to. You know, it's so sad that something so good has basically been turned so evil. And I don't understand how people can sit here and try to deny him the presidency when he was duly elected. He didn't win the popular vote, but he won with the system that the United States has. And now to cry about it and whine about it, I just don't see it.
And I thank you for the call. And again, the popular vote was skewed because Californians and large numbers voted for Hillary Clinton because they want the gravy train to continue. If you subtract that from the equation, Trump wins hands down the popular vote. California is bankrupting itself, and it wants the rest of the country to come along and bail it out every time it goes through this situation, which is unfortunate. You know, the popular vote would hold the rest of us as hostages to the liberals there. We have another caller with us. You're up next. You're on the air at 9:18. Go ahead. Well, that's been a problem for some of our callers this morning. Got about a minute and a half before the break, and then about 40 more minutes of the program still ahead. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. Victor Davis Hanson had a great piece today. I saw it linked at Real Clear Politics, where he was telling a story about an old Latino farmer that he knows in the Imperial Valley of California, who is a huge Trump supporter. See, this is despite what people would try to tell you about the Latino vote. But he also went on to explain that he said, I drove 150 miles away to Silicon Valley. I was in Palo Alto, and I was listening to some of the, how did he put it, the nerds, retro nerds, he said, who were sitting in this diner where I was having something to eat. And they all believe that everybody else is just like them in the country, and they vote for all of these liberals. And he said, it's very condescending that they go around and telling everybody else that, this is good for you, even though you may not believe it. And in other words, we know better. And so therefore, this is the way it needs to be. And now they're just trying to excuse everything as Russia or racists or yokels. And I'm sorry, it's not going to fly. Got a quick note. I wanted to mention my friends at Waddell and Reed this morning. If you're looking for someone to help you with investments, you're thinking about retirement and, some of these issues, we all are. I mean, we've got to be thinking about it at a certain point in life, and you should be thinking about it when you're young. Waddell and Reed has been in business now 80 years. One of the oldest firms to offer mutual funds. Waddell and Reed owns and manages 2 mutual fund families. They invest by a conservative nature, and they know what they're doing. They take a more planning approach and take a look at each piece of the puzzle for clients. They help build proper expectations, and they build plans around clients' needs and goals, and they help people manage money. Waddell and Reed takes planning personally. We'll take more of your telephone calls in just a few seconds or minutes. It's 12 right now. It's 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. We're up to 11. No, 12. We just clicked up. No, back to 11. Well, this may be the next to the last really cold morning we have. It'll be chilly tomorrow morning as well. And then we'll see a bit of a warm up. But again, this has been, if you have a flaw in your heating unit at home, you have discovered it obviously this winter because of the deep cold that we've had. So we've been reminding you, if you need to get the thing fixed or at least running more efficiently, you need to give the pros at Ramsey Heating and Electric a call. They'll come out and they'll get the job done right, and they'll get it done right the first time. Problem-free cozy winters are found at Ramsey Heating and Electric, 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. The telephone number, if you'd like to reach Ramsey Heating and Electric, is 678-0459. That's 678-0459, Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. I mentioned earlier that you've got some in media who are saying that Barack Obama is going out of his way to help Donald Trump with the transition. You got to be kidding me, right? I mean, he's making all of these changes to various rules and by fiat, which it will be, just to complicate things if Donald Trump has to turn around and reverse some of them. This is Mr. Obama, though, trying to explain to 60 Minutes last night that, well, we shouldn't underestimate Trump, but Obama says he still really needs to stick around Washington so that he can advise the new president.
I think everybody.
Oh, that's a very short to Mr. Obama there. Okay, well, but he went on to say, it's live radio. Apparently, that's related to my telephone calls dropping today too. But he went on to say that people have underestimated Donald Trump all along, and we shouldn't be doing that any longer. In other words, yeah, the guy might be a little cagier than we thought he was in the beginning, because he wasn't a professional politician. We scorned him here in Washington, but he bested us. Then he went on to say, though, how important it would be for him to advise Mr. Trump as the future went along, because Trump is going to end up stumbling along. In other words, I'm going to move a few blocks away and pretend I'm the president still, and media will actually come over to my house all the time to talk to me, and we'll keep the pressure on the current president. I'm telling you, the fix was long ago in, and it's still in, and media is playing right along. This morning on MSDNC, there was a short clip back in 2008 when Mr. Obama had been elected, and he was being interviewed by, what's the guy's name? Brian Williams. Yeah. Williams condemned fake news a couple of weeks ago publicly. You may remember he lost his old job because he was faking it too. But he's throwing all these softball questions at Mr. Obama. If you've been waiting 8 years for media to actually ask tough questions of a president, it will happen now. They didn't do it for the past 8 years. There's a particular form, well, I won't even go into it, of what they're doing, but a lot of these reporters have very dirty knees. And, they continue to say, well, yeah, but, he's the smartest man to ever be president of the United States. 11 degrees, and we're at 9:27. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Meanwhile, Mr. Trump speaking to the Times of London, very snooty newspaper, explaining why he continues to tweet, despite the fact that people are telling him it's not very presidential.
And the tweeting, I thought I'd do less of it, but I'm covered so dishonestly by the press.
Yeah. Eric Erickson, who was never a fan of Mr. Trump, is writing at his website today saying that Trump actually is brilliant in the way that he can keep people's eyes on certain stories and they miss everything else that's going on around them because media can't help itself. 9:27, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Good morning, Bill. I believe that the reason Obama is staying in Washington is, number one, he is a traitor and he is a terrorist. And at the same time, he's going to be tutoring Michelle so that she can become the first black woman president. I think he should leave, might as well leave the country, but he is so devious, and we're finding that out with all the laws that he's passing and all the things that he's doing just to screw up things for Trump when he comes to office. Have a good day with the thought. Bye.
Hey, thank you. Well, this notion that we have to have all of these, we got 335 million people in this country, and these political dynasties, whether they be Clinton, Bush, or Obama, you're telling me we can't find anybody else who can do the job? But yeah, there'll be people out there pushing for the fact that she needs to be the president, and they'll be making a big push for that. I don't, honestly though, I don't see it happening because I don't think she was ever, she wasn't involved in policy like Hillary Clinton was, going all the way back into the 1970s, and then even in the first Clinton administration. Michelle Obama was a little bit more removed from that, and I don't see it happening, and I don't think that she's a charismatic personality. I think she comes across. You think Hillary Clinton came across as being a shrew? I think it's going to be a challenge. And people say, well, we only talk that way when it comes to women candidates. Well, there are perceptions. Did you see the movie a few years ago about Margaret Thatcher, where they had to work with her to change the register of her voice? And it was, she went to speech lessons for that very same reason. And that's just perceptions, and it's not endorsing anything. It's just telling you that's the way it happens to work in politics and in public life. We're up to 14, 9:30. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. If I get a minute this morning, I want to mention a couple of stories I saw about alternative energy. huge dip in spending last year on solar power all around the world, not just in the United States. Have we lost our love affair for solar power and alternative energy? Don't know. If we get a chance, we'll talk about that though before the show closes today, or otherwise we'll delve into it. I would hope tomorrow.